Welcome to Good Grief Mama. I'm Allie, wife and mom of 3, and this is a podcast for honest conversations about motherhood and marriage and homeschooling and homemaking. So if you've ever felt called to do motherhood and marriage just a little differently, or if you've ever wondered, why is no one talking about this? Then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you're here. This episode is sponsored by Restore Your Core Physical Therapy. Mamas, whether you're pregnant, postpartum, or your kids are in college, your body deserves some TLC. The doctors at Restore Your Core Physical Therapy get it. From pelvic floor therapy and birth prep to fixing that back pain that you've been ignoring for way too long, they've got you covered. With locations in Carmel, West Carmel, Zionsville, and Greenwood, expert care is close by. Visit Restore Your Core or call 317-597-6323. Mention the Good Grief Mama podcast to get $50 off a 90-minute evaluation or $25 off a 60-minute evaluation. You've been taking care of everyone else, and now it's your turn. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Good Grief Mama. I was actually just out in my garden and I picked one half of a raspberry basically with my daughter, and I was like, this is it. We talked about feeding our families differently a couple weeks ago, and I'm there. I've now saved us like 1 cent on raspberries. But our raspberry bush has a few more coming in. So, we're getting there. But I was thinking this week, because I got a little overwhelmed with Pinterest and Instagram and all of the many 100 things to do with your kid this summer, or must do activities over the summer with your kids, or summer bucket list activities. And it feels like we're saving all of our kids' childhood for the summer. And we're just like trying to cram in as many special memories as we can during the summer because we feel like, I don't know, maybe we can't during the rest of the year. But why do we feel that way? Why do we feel like we have to cram an entire childhood into 3 months? And I started wondering, am I actually creating more memories or just more stress and more pressure? Because when I was a kid, the only bucket list, quote unquote, that we had was a chore bucket where my mom wrote out spring cleaning type chores. And every morning during the summer, we had to pull a chore out of the bucket and do the chore, like clean out the junk drawer, or like we had this junk craft cabinet that had like all of our markers and pencils and glue and paper and all that stuff. And somehow I always got that chore, but that was it. We didn't have big plans like every Tuesday we went to a museum or the zoo. We didn't go to parks or museums really at all. My parents still worked during the summer. So even during the summer, my dad worked from home. He worked from home all year, but we stayed home. We didn't have to constantly be going to camps or anything, but he was working, so we weren't doing big, exciting things necessarily over the summer. Every weekend, we did go to our lake house with our family and swim and stuff like that, but we didn't do huge, big plans. But the things that I remember from my summer that were great were just playing outside and going to the lake, which was a consistent, like a routine basically during the summer. So when did our summers start to become the only time that we feel like childhood like happens? We've created this cultural rhythm where everybody kind of feels like during the school year, it's like work, 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 and like survive basically. And then during the summer, it's like, yes, we get to live. I got to fill up this summer. I only have, 18 summers with my kid. And so I need to make sure that I make them all special and magical. And we'll do this when school gets out. We'll do that when school gets out. And, we kind of like push it off like, oh, we'll have more family time in the summer because things will be slower. We'll make more memories on vacation. I don't know why we started thinking that, because I think this too. I've saved the lists for summer. I created like a daily theme. So like over the summer, we had something different than we normally did, like make it Monday. So we would like make something new on Monday. We'll make bread or we'll bake something or whatever, like forage Friday. Cause I really liked what is that called? An alliteration. So we actually have nature class that we do on Fridays. So we go to nature, we get out in nature on Fridays. So I've been sucked into this too. Why am I not treating just an ordinary Tuesday special. Like, I'm making it seem like it doesn't count because it's just an ordinary day. And we're underestimating the power of repetition, you know, going to our neighborhood pool, playing outside, playing with neighbors, going to the library. It doesn't have to be big, expensive things for it to be special. And possibly the goal isn't to make summer so magical that our kids forget the rest of the year. But maybe the goal should be, how can we make all year special and make them feel loved and excited all year without making it such a big stressor and like a big deal? I think we're putting too much on ourselves, because what do our kids actually remember? We went to Florida one year. We had a nice house in Florida. We went to the beach. We went to an aquarium. We went to a pool, all the kind of stuff. And do you know what my 6-year-old remembers? He remembers the arcade games that were in the house, because this house that we rented, the Airbnb that we rented, had a couple of like arcade type games, in one of their rooms. And that's what he remembers. He does not remember the zoo. He does not remember the aquarium. He barely remembers the beach. All he remembers is that they had these little arcade games that he got to play. So it's our kids really remember, I feel like, not necessarily the big expensive things. They remember the smaller things or the repetitive things. Like throughout all of my years of childhood, I remember that we went to our lake house often. Not because our lake house is big and extravagant. And it's actually, when the one that we had when we were a kid was literally falling apart. I mean, my grandpa built it out of cinder blocks, and he built it. And so, I mean, it was great and it stood the test of time for sure. It's still standing, but it's not like it didn't have games. It didn't have TVs. It didn't have anything like that. It was literally a house with air conditioning, beds, a kitchen and all things. And we had a little beach, and we had a speedboat and a sailboat. And I remember that so much. We would go there. I remember the catching minnows and finding baby turtles and playing in the sand and running down the sand into the water. And, that's what I remember. I don't remember the big vacations. I don't remember, any museums really. I don't remember any of that kind of stuff, but I remember the repetition. So what I'm going to do is focus more on like the small, repetitive things that we can do all year long, but also that we can make seasonal things too. I think our kids will remember things like making homemade bread. The smell of the bread when we're making the bread, running outside barefoot, the same bedtime routine, reading 2 chapters of a book. We go around and we ask, what was your favorite part of the day during dinner? And if I have forgotten, my kids will remind me. Sunday family movie nights, that kind of stuff, rather than focusing on the big, big, big trips or expensive birthdays and elaborate things, focusing more of my energy and efforts on just meaningful stuff and slower, easy things, like the repetition. We always do this at dinner time. We always get donuts after church, or, whatever it may be. Creating more of a family culture than trying to cram in as many experiences as we can. Because I do feel like there is this pressure to perform, especially when it comes to motherhood in the summer. This pressure to have like a Pinterest perfect summer, or to we make things more complicated than they need to be. Perfect example is the idea of a mud kitchen. Now, we have a mud kitchen outside. It's a little wooden one that my mother-in-law got us for either Christmas or for my daughter's birthday. I can't remember. But if you look on Instagram, you type in mud kitchen, or Facebook, type in mud kitchen, there are all these super expensive and elaborate things that people are doing for mud kitchens that, for me, just don't make a whole lot of sense and feels like a lot of pressure and stress. You'll see they've got these little teeny containers filled with like the sparkles and glitter. And then they have this little container for pink, and they've got this little container for blue water, and this little container for another color water. And then they buy these little gems, and they put all this little stuff, and they line it all up and pretty, all nice and pretty on their mud kitchens. And I'm thinking, okay, I have kids. I've had a mud kitchen. That's going to be gone in 10 seconds. The glitter is going to all be dumped into a mixing bowl, and it's gone. The gems are going to be dumped in there, and they're gone too. And, I'm like, that's going to just go away in like 10 seconds. And then at the very minimum, the next day when they want to play with them, you're going to have to refill it. Like, that's not only very expensive, but like also where are you going to dump all that glitter water? Where are you going to dump all that paint water? We make things way more complicated than they need to be. Mud kitchens should be just like leftover stuff that you have. Like my kids, they do have the Amazon mud kitchen, so it's like $100 of a mud kitchen. And then we have leftover like whisks and cake pans and little cups, like random cups, and a pitcher, a plastic pitcher. And then they pick flowers from the garden or from the yard, really. We have a lot of clover. They pick flowers from the yard. They pick grass. There are these rocks that we have in this little like propane fire pit that we never use. And so they're like these red lava rocks. They use those. They had bubbles that they were using, and the bubbles are empty now. So they have the bubble containers that they use. It's just a bunch of leftover random stuff, and they love it. They'll play for hours out there and making different pies and stuff from the dirt and the grass that they found outside. We make things too complicated, more complicated than they need to be. But it's because we feel this pressure to have like an Instagram worthy summer, and we need to have proof that we've given our kids a magical childhood. And sometimes when we focus on making those memories, the pressure to make those memories, we miss out on enjoying the moment. We're so stressed about, oh no, they're out of the glitter. We're like, don't dump that. Don't dump it. You're going to be done, within 10 seconds of using it. And we stress over making the memory. And so we're not enjoying it. Or I have definitely had this happen, and I've seen people do this too, where they have like a mental checklist in their head of things that they need to do in order for this experience to be successful. For example, going to our lake house. Like if we're going to the lake house, if I had this mental checklist in my mind of like, okay, we need to ride the boat, we need to swim in the pool, we need to eat watermelon, and we need to play on the beach. And it's like, okay, well, if my kids don't want to play in the pool and all they want to do is play on the beach the whole time, then I could be so stressed. Be like, well, we haven't played in the pool yet. Let's go play in the pool. It's like I'm missing the whole point of enjoying the lake and letting my kids play. And so my focus is going to be now, because I am all about doing motherhood and marriage a little bit differently. And I think that includes mothering during the summer too. And just during the whole year, but during the summer in particular right now, my focus is not going to be on 100 things we can do during the summer, bucket list summer activities. I'm going to be thinking more practically and more slow. I'm going to be thinking about daily rhythms like morning outside porch time, walking around checking the garden. That is super fun for me and sometimes for my kids. Reading together at bedtime, letting the kids help cook, family walks, more family walks, playing music a lot more, letting them choose the different types of music. The other day, my son wanted to listen to piano music because he's learning piano. And so we listened to piano music all morning, and it was very calming. I think we can also create like little weekly rhythms. Like we have a weekly family movie night on Sundays where we make pizza and we watch a movie and we rotate who gets to pick it. Maybe you have a weekly library day or a weekly farmer's market day, a weekly family like adventure walk or something like that, just a weekly rhythm. And you can have seasonal rhythms too. We go strawberry picking every spring, we go pumpkin picking every fall, the Christmas traditions, but it's making those kind of rhythms and traditions. They don't need to be so elaborate, just meaningful. It's not necessarily about making things perfect. It's just about being present with your kids. And so, summer. What about summer? Practical things to do this summer. I am not giving you a 100 thing list. I am not going to tell you to tell your kids to pick a bucket list for the summer. I'm not going to tell you those things. You totally can do those things, but I'm not going to. I'm going to stop doing anything fun. No, I'm not saying not to do fun things during the summer. I love a good summer adventure, but I want to try and focus on being slower, slowing down, slowing our rhythm down, making more space for relaxation, for chalk, for bubbles, for bikes, for bugs in the backyard, for running around barefoot. You don't have to carry the weight of your child's childhood because they only have 18 summers with you. You don't have to carry that weight and think you must make things perfect. Again, it's not perfect. It's being present. It's not about creating the most magical experiences. It's about spending time together as a family. And if you think about the things that made your childhood special, the things that you remember, they're probably not the most elaborate vacations. They're probably not that you went to the most musicals around here. They're probably not because you went to the most princess meetups at the park. It's probably playing outside with your friends. It's probably running around and catching bugs and bug catchers and catching little fireflies when watching them light up. So let's allow ourselves to do summer a little differently. You don't have to think about all the things to make your summer magical for your kids. What you can do is just find time for them to be kids. A perfect example is we went to our lake house the other day, and my son, we have this like slide now on our deck that my dad was really excited about. It's like a slide that goes off the dock into the water. And my son spent like 30 minutes sliding off of that and then spending a few minutes after he got in the water just splashing because he's not allowed to splash when there's other people, like in the pool or whatever. He gets in trouble for that. But there was nobody in the lake and nobody around, and he just splashed. And he loved it. He spent 30 minutes going down the slide and then splashing in the water because he could just splash. What was he splashing? I don't know. He was just splashing the air. But it's those ordinary things like that that our kids will remember and that our kids will enjoy. So allow yourself to not be stressed. Don't feel the pressure of the Pinterest perfect summer and just enjoy it with your kids. So if you're with me, I want you to leave me a 5-star rating. I want you to comment, send me a text message. You can click the send a text message button in the notes and make sure you're following along with my email newsletter. It's a free weekly email newsletter that comes out where I'll be sharing all kinds of fun information. So make sure you sign up for that too in the show notes, and I'll see you next week.